So far away, Lucas, what's your favourite Superman moment?
It's probably where he just lets a bus full of children drown, right?
Oh, fucking! You had to do it. God damn it! What was I supposed to do? Let them die? Maybe.
I couldn't not.
The Fleischer Studios Superman shorts are widely considered some of the best pieces of Superman media ever made. Iconic from a visual standpoint and revolutionary from a technical one, the shorts have defined what Superman is for almost a century now, which makes it kind of amazing to think that no one wanted to make them in the first place. So far away, Lucas, are you familiar with the Fleischer Studios Superman shorts? And before you answer, I'm going to say, yes, you are.
So at first I didn't think I was, but then looking at the picture here, I'm like, this is the one, right, where he's I think I've seen a clip where he's flying through bullets and it's the most meticulously animated thing.
Yeah. It's I'm going to be putting in as many clips as I can of these Fleischer shorts because they are ridiculous. They are some of the best examples of animation, full stop, and they are from almost a century ago. And for fans of Superman who maybe aren't familiar with the Fleischer Studio shorts, you are 100% familiar with them due to their impact. Because if you've seen, for example, just animated Superman is 100% informed by the look of those shorts. The Superman in those shorts is so iconic that when they were making, do you like the animated Superman series? What defined Superman for an entire generation?
The 90s with Justice League following up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They specifically had to go, well, we don't want it to look like the Fleischer shorts because they're so iconic, and then realise they're so good that we have to make our Superman look like this because it's we don't want to copy it, but it is the best thing that Superman's ever been in. Why would we not? Why would we not copy the best example of this?
Bruce Timm had it very set in his head that he wanted to go with this 40s style look, the design of the original comics, with several preliminary sketches of his in this style popping up in various places over the years. Everything from action poses, to head studies, to full body model sheets.
It's yeah, it's hard because you don't want to build yourself on the shoulders of giants, but you've also kind of got to.
Yeah, it's what could you really do to top these? And if anyone's out there thinking, well, are these things really that good? I'm hopefully going to be able to showcase how good they are via the clips I'm going to show. And I remember once I was having a conversation with my missus about animation, because we were watching My Hero Academia or something. Joe, those moments where just the entire budget's on screen at once. Just random, Provenance Burn or something like that, or the United States of Smash, and you're this is just money burning on screen. And what we ended up doing is try to think of the best example of animation we could that the other hadn't seen. And she tracked down Your Name, which is an anime I highly recommend, again, from a visual standpoint, fucking flawless. And I, as my, just the off-meta pick, the dark horse, I went, the Fleischer Studio Superman shorts. And it's what are those? And I said, I'm not even going to show you the entire thing. I'm just going to show you the one clip of Superman stopping molten steel with his cape.
Oh my god.
And it is, she looked at it and went, when did this come out? And I went, over 70 years ago. And she's like, no! Yep. I told her, at the same time these shorts were made, they were making Popeye cartoons.
God, yeah.
And those Popeye cartoons were made by Fleischer Studios.
I was going to say, another thing that looks really well animated nowadays. Okay, so you said that we're all familiar with them, but as somebody who's probably just seen clips, what actually are these shorts?
Well, they were, as the name suggests, short animations of Superman on his various adventures that were meant to be shown before other films. And that's a trend that I want to come back. I don't even miss them because we never had them. Only Disney movies really have shorts before them.
Because, Yeah, thinking about like Disney ones, like one that still really stands out to me is Paperman. That was phenomenally animated.
Yeah, and it's just a way for the studio to like get up and coming talent to work on something that's, not as important as say a Marvel movie, but like we're not going to get them to work on a Cinderella, but you can do a 5-minute short. And that's how some of the most iconic cartoon characters came into existence. It's like the Looney Tunes were just shorts that showed before movies. Like Tom and Jerry were designed to fill air. Literally, they made Tom and Jerry cartoons to fill the dead air between shows on the BBC.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Because the BBC doesn't show adverts, but they'd have like 3 or 4 minutes before like a new show starts. They'd just put Tom and Jerry shorts on, and they'd commission Tom and Jerry shorts and other cartoons and stuff.
So you're saying that those cartoons are just 100% filler?
Basically, yeah. But they're good filler, and the same is true of these Superman shorts, where like Paramount Studios wanted some shorts to go before their films, and they just so happened to have the license for Superman at the time. And they also just so happened to have one of the best animation studios in the business working for them, Fleischer Studios. However, Fleischer Studios were not happy with Paramount. And Lucas, do you want to guess why Fleischer Studios were not happy with Paramount? And as someone who's like just reasonably familiar with how Hollywood operates.
I mean, I'm guessing some kind of contract dispute or something.
Yep, you are exactly right there, Lucas. Fleischer Studios were not happy with Paramount, and they'd had a massive dispute over their animated feature, Gulliver's Travel, which I again recommend people go watch just to see how good the animation is.
Happy day, you and me, for us and me, all the past has rolled away. It's a happy day.
And the story goes that Fleischer Studios were promised money on the back end if the film did well, which it did, making like 3 or 4 times its budget. However, instead of sharing the profit with them, Paramount fined Fleischer $350,000 for going over budget.
Yeah, I can see how that would piss somebody off.
Yeah, it's like, so they fined them for going over budget, even though them going over budget didn't matter because they still made more money, and the amount they fined them was more than they went over budget.
Oh, fucking hell, of course it was.
Yeah, so Fleischer Studios, understandably, weren't too happy with Paramount coming up to them and being like, make a Superman short, but make it as good as all the other stuff you do. Like, why? Why would we work that hard on something when you're just going to rip us off again? Or are you just going to find a way to fine us money or not pay us what we're owed? So what Fleischer Studios did is, when they were asked how much it cost to make Superman shorts, went, about $100,000 an episode, which, for anyone wondering, is the modern equivalent of about $2 million today.
Oh,
Keep in mind, these were 5-minute long shorts.
Yeah. I mean, fair play if you think you're just going to get fucked over by them again.
And just to clarify, because $100,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, today, that is the modern equivalent of about $2 million, and that's how much it costs to make a full-length episode of Game of Thrones in its mid-season. And they were asking for that for a 5-minute long animation.
I mean, get paid for your work, Karl.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing. Whenever you mention like figures like this, people say, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. It's like inflation has to be taken into account.
Especially like back in the 40s.
Yeah, so it's like $100,000 will be the modern equivalent of what it costs to make one episode of Game of Thrones, or the CGI budget for 5 seasons of The Flash.
But, but at the end of the day, when you're like Fleischer back in the 40s,
Yep.
turn around and be like, well, who else are you going to get to make something that's going to look as good?
Exactly, yeah, because as mentioned, Fleischer made the Popeye shorts, and while Popeye is admittedly very dated, it's a pretty old school cartoon, isn't it? Those cartoons
of course,
do look good.
They're well animated, yes.
Yeah, the animation on them is incredibly fluid, and it has that rubbery aspect to it that is like, just unique almost to animation, and it's something that you've talked before about in the past in regards to like live action adaptations of animated things, of them not taking advantage of that unique aspect of animation.
Exactly, yeah. And I think like you can see to this day the like appeal of something like a Fleischer animation where, for example, when one of my favourite games came out, Cuphead, and everyone lost the crap over that art style.
Yep. And in regards to like the Fleischer stuff, it still holds up because, it's all hand-drawn frame by frame. It's really difficult for that to look bad. And just to put into context how much like money this was back then, This is about 8 times what Fleischer would charge for a Popeye short.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
Keep in mind, Popeye as well was already an established popular brand back then, compared to Superman.
Mhm.
Which is weird to think about, isn't it? Like, back then, Popeye might have had more pull than Superman.
Yeah, that is what you'd like. I don't know how late Superman became overly popular, but yeah, Popeye was huge back in the day.
The comics were popular, but it was only in comics, whereas Popeye was in comics and animation.
Mm-hmm.
And much to Fleischer Studios' surprise, Paramount agreed to their demands, but they had a few caveats, and they said, "We're not going to give you $100,000 an episode. That's ridiculous." The Fleischer said, "Okay," and they went, "But we will give you $50,000 for the premiere." So about the modern equivalent of $1 million for 5 minutes of animation, and then $30,000 for every subsequent episode. So about double what they were paid for a Popeye short. And with that, they were like, "I guess we kind of have to make these now."
I mean, yeah, but that's lowballing them based on their highball offer, admittedly.
Yeah, but they were still being offered double their average fee for a short, and they felt compelled to accept the offer and compelled to make it as good as they possibly could because they were basically being paid double the industry average for it, and that's how those shorts became so visually iconic and why they're still considered the gold standard for what Superman can look like today.
I mean, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's great, and that's the thing as well. I'm so happy we get to talk about this. More than anything, it's like putting clips of those shorts. So when I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and she's like, the what shorts? I'm like, you need to watch these. These are fucking incredible. And just how fluid they are. And like I said, the one of just Superman stopping molten lead with his cape. And the animation of his cape absorbing all the liquid and it flowing off him, and it looks amazing. It's how did they do this? It's just money, time, and skill.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. There's very few people that have the time, money, and skill nowadays to be able to actually still do that, or be given the opportunity to do that anyway.
Mm-hmm. And far away, Lucas, before we get into the end discussion, I would like to mention that today's video is sponsored by us, isn't it? Because we have content outside of Fact Fiend, and specifically I want to talk about our streams.
Hell
so,
yeah.
Lucas, where can people find you when you're streaming, and what is it you like to play when you are?
So I am a variety streamer. You can find me over at twitch.tv/legendofcanto. At the moment, I am playing through every Zelda game in existence over on my Tuesdays. And then at the moment, we're finishing up God of War Ragnarok and Pokemon as well. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
If anyone wants to find my Twitch stream, it's twitch.tv/KarlSwood. That's KarlSwood. Yes, I know it sounds funny, that's why I picked it. With that out of the way, Lucas, let's talk for a bit about just good animation, and let's have the same conversation me and my girlfriend had a few months ago about just good examples of animation from TV shows that just stick out in your mind. And I mentioned My Hero Academia, and I've no doubt put the clips in of the United States of Smash and the Provenance Burn. But is there any other animation examples you can think of? Because I know you're a fan of One Piece, yes?
I am a fan of One Piece, but admittedly, especially the more modern side of One Piece, they are basically doing almost every single week they are doing one chapter, and I don't think that most of the episodes of One Piece I would say are as high quality as some of the more modern newer animes, for example Demon Slayer, where every single time they do a super attack you can just see the money dripping off the page, or some of the shots in the later Attack on Titan seasons.
Mm-hmm. That is a shame, because I know you've talked before at length about how interesting the utilisation of Luffy's powers are with his rubbery skin. I was wondering if you had an example of that, but I guess if you don't, any other animes then? So if we stay in that realm, because I know there's going to be plenty of people in the comments saying, check this one out. And before they do, I'm going to mention, yes, we're aware of Redline and Akira and all those other ones. They're the ones people always mention.
And there's two that stick out to me as great examples of what we talk about of utilizing the budget for the single shots that you want, and that's Mob Psycho 100 and One Punch Man, both by the same
One Punch Man's
animators.
the best example of that, I think.
And just like doing those like really basic ass shots of Saitama just being like, okay, and then putting it all into just that single one punch.
Checkmate. Oops.
And that's why I think stuff like the Fleischer shorts should come back, because the idea of spending your entire budget in 5 minutes
Yes,
is something I'm greatly interested in. It's like, look what you can do. Just get a studio to flex for those 5 minutes. And it reminds me a little bit of, are you familiar with the Boondocks at all?
I'm aware of the Boondocks, but I've not watched it.
So I would recommend going to watch it, even if you're not interested in the characters or the story, because the people who made that show got Madhouse do the animation. And if you know anything about anime, you know that Madhouse is one of those names where you're like, oh, okay. They know what they're talking about, and they have like so many like kung fu fights in that show that are fucking incredible. I do love though when conversations like this come out and people always just do like, well, what about Akira? It's like everybody knows that Akira is like the fucking gold. You're not beating Akira because it cost like $800 million and every single frame was like hand painted. And like, people go, what about Redline? It's like, we know about Redline as well.
Carl, let me tell you about little known anime called Cowboy Bebop, right?
Yeah. And that's what always like amuses me about stuff like this, where we have a conversation, we're clearly clued up enough to know some of the more obscure things, or at least like know the things that people who like anime would know. And then people talk to us if we don't know what Akira is. It's like, I can't believe you didn't mention Akira. It's like, because everybody knows it.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I will say, you know, to people out there who might not watch a lot of the, like, you know, comic book animated stuff, not like manga and anime and stuff, shout out to both like Marvel and DC for having a solid lineup of animated movies still.
Yeah, they still like make them on occasion. The animation is not fantastic, but
no, but they're like good movies. The animation quality isn't like necessarily there. It still feels along the same vibes as like the 90s and 2000s like Justice League and stuff.
Yeah, they're still trying to keep like that feel alive. But moving back to like animation, we're going to mention a show that, you know, it's my personal bugbear now, and it's Batman Beyond.
Do you mean Batman of the Future, Carl?
Oh God. I'm just going to put it out there to all the people comment on the Robert Pattinson video saying it's not called Batman of the Future in America, it's called Batman Beyond. It's like, yeah, we know. We corrected that 10 seconds after we said it.
Oh, dear.
It's like, can people not just wait the 10 seconds before commenting to see if we correct ourselves or anything? But I do want to mention that show because it does have a pretty interesting animation style where like it's made similarly to the Batman animated show. And do you know how they made that look so visually distinct? It's pretty interesting.
No, I don't know.
It's instead of using white paper with black ink, they use black paper with white ink.
Oh,
and that's why, like, you know, all the blacks in that show are so like distinct and like sharp.
And Eric had come up with this brilliant plan of doing all the backgrounds on black paper, on black board.
I really liked it. I mean, the idea of doing everything on the black paper was very stylish.
It really looks like it's painted on black velvet, and it's just beautiful.
You're not pulling drawings out of the light, you're pulling the drawing out of the darkness, which is, of course, where Batman lives.
Then they do something similar, although not the same, with Batman Beyond or Batman of the Future if you're from the UK. Or apparently in my alternate version of America that I remembered. But like, they have just like very distinct, like blocky, I don't want to say blocky, but I mean like, you know, just like sharp contrast between like solid colours. And they utilise that for like scenes where they're in like nightclubs and it just aggressively flashes between like, you know, entire shades. Like they're dropping a shade over the scene. And I feel like they captured the feel of those original Batman animated shorts. He's not as like, you know, physically imposing as that Batman, because that Batman's just fucking wide and he's like a car door.
Yeah.
But like the fluidity of like, do you know that great shot where like Batman's still on top of like a roof edge and then it's like he just turns it a liquid and just like dashes down.
Yeah.
Even though that's like not what it would look like in real life, you know, they're taking advantage of animation to like, you know, make it look like, you know, Batman becomes a shadow.
Yes.
And they kind of have moments like that with the character Ink in that show where it's a character who's made of like this weird liquid, and she's like can bounce everywhere. And I feel like I remember looking at them going, that just looks real good.
After all I gave you, how could you have turned out like this?
And then there's obviously like the very famous like Batman animated series Clayface scene, which is just ridiculous.
Where he's like, transforming into all the different things and it melts away.
And I don't know if you've seen it, but there was also Batman Gotham Knight, and that's like I think it was just straight to DVD, but it was like 6 or 7 different Batman shorts, and each one was in a different animation style.
I think
that was really fun.
Is that the one where they use my idea? I'm not saying it's my idea, but it's where like it's the kids talking about
a monster.
Yeah, they're talking about a monster that they saw, and it turns out the monster is Batman.
Yeah, it's like this thing that like slithered through the night and just attacks people out of nowhere, and just everyone disappears. It's like it was Batman.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gotham Knight.
And I'm a big fan of like animation and just people taking advantage of just the fluidity and the absolute like freedom of creativity offered by it. And I know that the internet loves its negativity, so let's now talk about the opposite briefly and just like bad examples of animation. I'm going to single out the show Son of Zeus, which is on Netflix. And did you see that at all?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I think it's called Son of Zeus anyway, but its basic premise is it's like a retelling of Greek myth. And the picture that you see on Netflix and all the posters show you like the animation as if it looks like Greek pottery.
Oh yeah.
Like like the yellow background with all like the black on it, and I was like, that's going to be really interesting if that's an entire show. I'm really interested in seeing how they utilize this animation style, and something we've talked about in the past is that when you have limitations, that's normally where creativity flourishes, because like how are they going to work around the limitations of this like very limited art style and color palette? I'm interested to see where they go with that, and it turns out that they use that for the poster and the trailer, and it's just a generic looking Western anime. I'm like, fuck's sake! It just looks like every other Netflix animated show, but just not as good because the animation budget's not there. And it's like, I was so interested when I thought it was going to look like Greek pottery come to life. Instead, now it's just generic fucking crap. So is there a shot at that for you? I honest to God, like, I saw the trailer, like, this looks interesting, I can't wait. I want to watch it, turn it on second one, it's not that, and I'm like, fuck this.
So I'm going to get probably some like backlash, and I know that I'm not entirely right in my opinion, because I have like gone forward through the show and like checked out other bits where it does look a lot better.
But Lucas, it's called an opinion, and you're entitled.
It is an opinion, and I'm just going to have to look up what it was called again.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's it.
That one really got me. That Son of Zeus one was so disappointing. It's my fault. I built up the idea in my head of what it was, and just never bothered to do any research. I saw it announced, but that looks cool. I'll check that out. And when it came out, I'm like, oh, it's not what I thought it was. The thing I thought it was would be way fucking cooler.
Yeah. So like in the vein of superheroes and stuff, I got really turned off, and I don't know what it was. But halfway through episode 1, I turned off Invincible because of its animation style. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt a little bit off. And as I said, I've gone and watched like some of the better, more like obviously budgeted action scenes that do look good, but something just felt a little bit weird about it.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where it's difficult to like disagree with you, because some of it does look a bit stilted. And there is that like Family Guy quality to it, by which I mean like when characters are talking, they just stand perfectly still.
Yeah, but like I'm used to anime where that happens a lot, and I can't figure out what the difference was in my head, but there was something that just turned me off.
Yeah, but I will say it's worth going back and watching it, because the money is where it needs to go, which is the fight scenes.
Yeah,
and there is that one scene that I know everybody's screaming at in the comments about how good it looks, which is the train scene. And that's all I'm going to say. And if you know what the train scene is, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it and you've not bothered about spoilers, just Google Invincible train scene. And just like that thing, it's like, yeah, that's pretty good animation. It's also fucking disgusting.
And then, we can't not just mention in this discussion just like the 2 Spider-Verse movies. Like, obviously, the second one hasn't come out yet, but the trailers have. And...
Oh, did you see just like the absolute most brain dead nuclear take ever, where it's a guy like, I can't wait till I can download this movie illegally in regards to the trailer for Into the Spider-Verse 2 and up-res it to 60 frames a second so it actually looks good.
No. Kill me now.
That's like people have motion smoothing on their TV and like, I don't see what the problem is. Or like that legendary take I saw on a forum once, like, what are these stupid black bars on the side of my screen? I don't like them. I paid for a big TV, I want all of the space used.
Oh, that reminds me of like when I used to play like Pokemon Red or Crystal on my Game Boy Advance, and I'd do like the zoomed stretch mode, thinking like, well, it fills the whole screen, that's better, right?
Yeah.
It looks so much worse. Don't do it.
You thought that as a child. If people don't know why Lucas had that very visceral reaction, it's because Into the Spider-Verse, it's something we talked about throughout this entire video, takes really good advantage of the medium of animation to the point where they even utilize the idea of frames. Now, the individual frames of animation are a story element that's utilized. And do you want to explain why, Lucas?
Yeah, so I believe the animation is at 24 frames a second, and like, for example, like Peter Parker is animated on 24 frames a second, but while Miles Morales is learning, he's on 12 frames a second or in doubles, which means that every animation that he has looks slightly more stilted. And then there's that obviously like very famous scene where the 2 Spider-Men are swinging together and Miles is like learning how to swing properly, and then he like leans into animating on single frames and animating smoother because he's becoming a better Spider-Man. It's a story element.
Doing it. Double tap to release and whip it out again. Okay. Whip and release and whip, release, whip and release. You're a natural. Whip, release. Feel the rhythm?
That is something you can only do with animation because it's something unique to that. Because if you did that in a real film, you couldn't film 2 different actors with different frame rates. It looked so stupid and so weird. It would not fit the world. So it's something you can pretty much only do with animation, and they take advantage of that. And you don't notice it in your head, but when it's explained to you, it's like, oh yeah, Miles Morales, he did look kind of like jerky and janky.
A little bit stuttery or something, yeah.
He's not moving as fluidly as like the other Spider-Man. And then it's like, yeah, because he's not as good as Spider-Man, but as soon as they're in sync, they are like, when they're like, thematically and metaphorically in sync, they become literally in sync in the animation. It's like, oh, that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So clever. And I love it.
But no, just make it 60 frames.
Yeah, just upscale it to 60 frames and put motion smoothing on your TV.